Hi there, welcome to TLC for your spine. So before we get started, make sure that you have on hand a blanket or soft cushion to lay down on, and then a small pillow. And then towards the end of the practice, for our final relaxation, I'm going to be advising you to place your legs up on either a chair or a couch. You don't have to, but that is a nice way to finish the practice off. So just make sure that you have those things handy, a pillow, a blanket, and a chair or a stool, some kind of low seat that you can rest your legs on. Okay? Once you've gathered all your props, go ahead and come to standing and join me with your feet about hips width apart, your knees unlocked, and just shift your weight a little bit from side to side, feeling how the weight shifting changes what part of your hips are engaged and potentially what part of your low back is talking to you. So this practice is meant to be a practice to avoid back pain in the lumbar area, lumbar sacral area. If you are currently experiencing back pain, I advise you to go see my video on pain flare-up, and you can do part 1 and 2, depending on how difficult the pain flare-up is. Okay, so this is more of a maintenance video. All right, so now that you've kind of gotten into the weight moving through the legs, let's start to warm up the joints. So we're just going to start with the ankles. Step the feet comfortably close together and just begin to bend the knees any amount and then straighten the legs. As you go down, see if you can keep more of the weight on your heels. I know the weight is going to want to go forward, but by keeping more of the weight on the heels, you'll feel how the hips have to shift backward. And that's going to stretch the buttock and kind of where the hamstrings connect. And these are some of the culprits for low back pain. Okay. Now you're welcome to stay with this movement, or if you'd like, on the next straightening up, you can bring one knee up towards your chest and then come back down, bring the other knee up. And it's as if there is something connecting the ribs and the thigh as you move, because there actually is something connecting the ribs and the thigh. So as you move, you want to keep that distance between the ribs and the thigh a similar length. So this requires some focus and attention. And then if you're starting to get a little bit winded, just remember that you're trying to breathe in a smooth and steady way. Okay, last one. And then just come up to stand and see how that feels. So hopefully that's warmed up the ankle, the knee, and the hip joint a little bit. Now we're going to come into some circles for the hips. And what I'd like you to do is set your right hand on your right hip. Step the feet out about shoulder width. Keep the knee slightly bent. And where your hand is, that's the hip I want you to focus on. So start to circle the hips around, and obviously both hips go together. But really pay attention more to the right hip than the left. As if the right hip were doing all of the work. Left hip is just around, just being dragged around. Notice how you do get more sensation in that right hip when you focus on it. And also notice that you don't have to make the circles really, really big to get sensation. Let's do one more in this direction. And then we'll reverse. See how that is to go the other direction, just focusing on the right hip. I think taking care of the hips goes a long way towards reducing chronic low back pain. Okay, let's do one more. And then we'll just come to center, release your hand, and take a moment to feel any difference between the right side of your whole body versus the left side of your body. Just by doing that little movement. All right, let's try it on the left side now. So left hand on your left hip, and we're going to drive this circle from the left hip. Coming around. Doesn't have to be a really big circle. What we're looking for is to feel more sensation in the left side than the right. And it may be a little bit harder. Second side is always a little bit harder to isolate because you've already done the first side. So it's kind of firing all of those sensory organs. Let's see if you can pay more attention to the left hand, left hip. One more this direction. And then we reverse. Yeah. You might get some creaks and cracks in there. And you might notice that it feels very different left side to right side. That's pretty common. Okay. And then come back to center, pausing, just feeling left side versus right side. All right, now the fun part, let's do both hips. So place your hands. Notice that wherever you place your hands, that's where your attention goes. So bring your hands to both hips and start to circle around. Nice big circles. Don't skip out on this back bend. This is nice here too. Lean way back. And then come around. See how that feels. So typically that first back bend is a little bit shaky for me. My body isn't quite sure that's what we want to do. And then after a while it starts to get a little bit more comfortable. One more this direction. And then we'll reverse. So our low back and sacral area is really affected by what the legs do. And if you are not moving the legs very much, that can be an issue. Or if you're moving the legs too much in one repetitive motion, that can also be an issue. Something I learned when I used to dance ballet. All right, come back to center. Just notice how that feels. Now let's take a few intentional breaths here. Breathing in, see if you can fill up the belly. And then breathing out, Empty your belly. Breathing in, fill up, and breathing out, empty. Nice and slow and smooth. And observe if there is any response in the hips to your breath. Do you feel maybe a little bit of a rise and fall in the hips? Do you feel a shifting of the weight towards your toes or your heels? And it's okay if you don't feel anything yet. We're going to keep practicing this and hopefully grow our ability to sense small, subtle movements. All right. So next we're going to warm up the whole spine. As I mentioned, we focus on one area, but then because we are an integrated unit, we need to place that area in the context of the whole body. So we're going to do a spinal roll as a warm-up, and let's just begin with the neck. So on your next inhale, visualize a fiddlehead fern as it opens up, and roll your neck open, pushing the back of your head into an imaginary headrest. Lift the chin as high as it's comfortable for you. And then on your exhale, slowly drop the chin, re-roll your neck down towards your chest. Inhale, unrolling your neck, pushing your head in that imaginary headrest. And then exhaling, rolling down. And this next time that you exhale down, allow the shoulders to really drop, bend your knees, and take a very subtle tuck of the pelvis. And then inhaling, push your head against that imaginary headrest, lift the chin. This time go just a little bit deeper into that kind of tuck. Inhaling, unrolling, head goes up. This time go all the way down, dropping the chin, dropping the shoulders, the upper back, the waist. Hands just sort of dangle down towards the toes. And then coming up, swing your hips forward. So the weight goes more towards the toes. Hips go forward. Head is pushing into that imaginary headrest. And then you're upright. Okay, let's bring the hands up overhead. And we're going to do the full body roll now. So start by dropping your wrists, your elbows, your chin, your shoulders, your upper back, mid back, low back, hips, knees, and then the weight goes all the way down into the heels. And then you start to stack up by pushing the weight towards the toes. You swing the hips forward. The arms just sort of get out of the way, moving to the side. Hips push forward as the head pushes back, and then the arms lift the top of the spine. And you do the whole thing again. Wrists, elbows, shoulders, neck, upper back, mid back, low back, hips, knees, feet. And then rolling towards the toes, the knees, the hips, and the arms go up. That's the inhale. Exhale as you roll down. Inhale as you roll up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up. And do this about 3 more times. And then the next time your arms are overhead, just exhale and bring the arms down in front of you, letting the arms rest down by your sides, and just pausing for a moment to observe how that feels. Okay. So now we're going to come into a little bit of a twist. Let's start off with the feet about shoulder width apart. And we're going to wrap our arms around an imaginary tree, like you're hugging the tree. Gently sink down in your knees and hips like you're sitting down on a bar stool. And take a breath in. As you exhale, begin to twist to your right. Turn first the elbows and then the head, and then unwind elbows and then the head. Keep the hips pointed forward. Exhale, twist elbows and then the head left. Inhale, elbows and then the head back to center. Exhale, elbows and head right. Inhale, elbows and head center. Exhale, elbows and head left. Inhale, elbows and head center. Now, if you'd like, you can add a little more movement here at the waist. Just be careful that you're not going to twist your hips or your knees. Keep everything from the waist down as it is. So inhale here at center. Exhale, twist waist, elbows, head, and then untwist waist, elbows, head. Exhale left, waist, elbows, head, untwist, waist, elbows, head. And continue. If that's too deep, if you're unable to isolate the upper body from the lower body, then you can go back to just doing the elbows and the head. Exhaling into the twist, inhaling back to center. Now the next thing I want you to do, keep twisting, but the next time you twist, I want you to put your weight into your heels. Put your weight into your heels. And the heel that is opposite the side that you're twisting towards, that'll be heavier. So for example, I'm going to twist to my right and I'm going to drop the weight into my left heel a little more. And then come back to center and the weight shifts back to both feet. Then I exhale to my left, dropping the weight into my right heel a little more. And then inhaling back to center. Let's do that just a couple more times. And you can do this weight shifting into the heels whether or not you are twisting at the waist or just twisting at the elbows and head. Last one to each side. And then come back to center. Go ahead and release your arms. And just see how that feels. Let's bring the feet closer together now. And this is where you'll bring in a pillow or a folded up blanket, something light. And you're just going to set that on top of your head. And I know this is a little bit goofy looking, but in a moment it'll make sense. So I'm going to show you from the side. Begin with your feet about hips width apart, knees slightly bent, and then set the pillow on top of your head. Now, beginning at the heels, start to elongate the body from the floor up into the pillow, as if you're trying to push the pillow towards the ceiling with just the muscles inside your body, not your arms. So begin to push the heels against the floor. Feel that firm, the muscles around your knees. Keep the tailbone slightly tucked and engage the muscles along the spine. And then push with the top of your head up towards the ceiling. And notice how active the legs are. Right? This is your Tadasana, your mountain pose, but it's a very active Tadasana. Now let's do this a bit dynamically. So exhale the breath out, and as you inhale, begin to soften the knees, the hips, the neck, and even the hands and the shoulders kind of pull in. Exhale, push down against the floor, push up against the pillow, and reach the arms out. And then inhale, retract, just softening those joints. I'm going to show you from the front. Exhale, push against the floor, press the hands out. Inhale, retract, softening ankles, knees, hips, neck. Exhale, push out. Push the feet, push the hands. Inhale, retract. This time do it with the arms a little higher. Push out. And then inhale, retract. And this movement that you're making with your breath is very similar to how certain sea creatures propel through the water. Like a squid, they push off. Do this one more time. Inhaling and then exhaling, push off. Good. And then release. And we're going to get rid of the pillow. And we're going to do a little bit of a lunge, just a baby lunge. Don't get too excited here. But it's really good to open up the front of the thigh and hip and belly area. This is another one of the team that can sometimes contribute to low back pain. So we want to make sure that these guys get a nice stretch. So let's just begin with the hands on the hips, feet about hips width apart, and you're going to step back with your left foot. Stay on the ball of your foot, bend both knees and lean back. You're tucking the tailbone under so that you feel the stretch along the front of the thigh and across the front of the hip. So you might be really open here, which means that you have to step the foot further back or drop the knee further down. If you're not quite as open in the hips, you don't need to step as far back. Okay? And then you bring the feet together, and then we step the right foot back. So same thing, on the ball of the foot, lean back until you feel that stretch. You might not need to go quite as far on this side. And then come back to center. Let's exhale as we go back. Inhale as we come up. Exhale back. Inhale up. And then if balance is tricky, you might skip this next part, just doing the legs and focusing on that. But if you want to challenge your balance, you can add the arms, which is very similar to what we just did. Retracting on the inhale, exhaling, pushing out. Inhale, retracting. Exhale, pushing out. Inhale, retracting. Exhale, pushing out. Inhale, retracting. Exhale, pushing out. And then come back to center and just see how that feels in your body. Okay, so now we're going to come down into our floor practice. So at this point, it's a really good idea to get something cushiony for the floor. So something like a blanket, or maybe a really soft yoga mat. So we're going to start with a squat pose. So come down, toes can be turned out, feet can be as wide as you want, and just come down to a comfortable squat position. So you might stay here, kind of halfway, or if it's available, you can start to bend the hips lower than the knees. What I don't want is for you to have your heels lifted up so that this becomes a balancing pose. Okay, so find a way to be in your squat without balancing on your tippy toes. And just pause here. Remember I said taking care of the hips goes a long way towards taking care of the back. This is what I meant. This pose here can be really useful. Now we're going to shift from here to all fours. So transition slowly, especially if there's some tenderness in the legs. And then eventually make your way down all the way to your belly. All the way down to your belly. And just pause on your belly. Breathing. And sensing. So as you breathe here, notice how the belly pushes against the floor on the inhale and retracts away from the floor on the exhale. Kind of a little mini Uddiyana Bandha there. All right, so now let's have the legs about hips width apart. Keeping the legs straight, just very slowly begin to raise the legs up off the floor 1 or 2 inches. Doesn't have to be very high. Notice how that feels on your low back. And then lower the legs back down and relax them. Now stacking the palms, open the elbows to the sides, push against the arms and lift your head up. And notice how that feels. And then bring your head back down. Let's do the legs again independently. So both legs come up 1 or 2 inches, not too far. Legs stay straight. And then you lower the legs down, relaxing the hips. And then push against the floor to lift your head up. And the whole time you're paying attention to what effect this has on your back. If there's twinges, pinches, discomfort, please listen to that and adjust accordingly. So you can do either legs or head, or you can try both together. Lifting the legs first, then pushing against the floor with the arms to lift your head. Just see how that feels. Doesn't have to be high. And then we'll slowly lower everything down. Relaxing, breathing. Let's do that again. Lift the legs, push against the arms, lift the head. Breathe. And then slowly lower down. This time, lift the legs, lift the head, and then if you want to challenge yourself, you can go ahead and lift the arms as well. And then everything comes back down. And we're just going to do that one more time. So start with the legs. Push against the floor, lift your head. And then see if the arms want to come up. And then once you're done, go ahead and drop everything down. Breathe. Relax. Slowly move your way into child's pose, pushing back through all fours. And sinking the hips back down towards your feet any amount. Take a few breaths. And then come back into all fours. This time, we're going to bring the left knee forward and then have a seat on that left hip. So you're sitting down on your left hip. Right knee is back behind you. Right knee can be a little bent or a lot bent. And then you're going to fold over this left leg any amount. Just pause and breathe. And then slowly bring your torso back upright. Let's shift back into all fours. And we'll take the right knee forward. Sit down on your right hip. Both knees are bent. And then fold over that right leg. And then slowly come back up and just swing that back leg around so that you're sitting with your knees bent. We're going to come into some spinal rolls. If any part of your neck or your body is not okay with spinal rolls, then just roll to your side and eventually meet us on your back, okay? Otherwise, hands behind your thighs, tuck your chin, and roll to your head and then to your tail. Do this a few times, massaging your back. Next time you go back, pause. And let the feet come to the floor, knees stay bent. Just pause there. Feeling your belly rise as you inhale and feeling your belly fall as you exhale. Observe how the weight is distributed across the back of your pelvis. You might notice that the back of one hip is a little lighter than the other. And I'm not asking you to change that, just notice it. Now walk the feet and the knees right next to each other. And with your next inhale, without picking the feet up, just gently slide your right knee forward and your left knee back, like a little scissor opening up. So right knee slides forward, left knee slides back. Feel how the back of your right hip is now away from the floor, back of the left hip is down into the floor. And then let's try switching. So bring the legs back to center, back to starting, and then slide the left knee forward, right knee back. And we're talking about just an inch or two. And feel how that shifts the weight. So now the right hip is heavier than the left hip. And let's just go side to side that way very slowly. Slow enough so that you can feel how the weight moves across the pelvis, across the back of your pelvis, meaning the sacrum and where the sacrum and the ilia meet. Keep your feet flat on the ground as you do this. Let's go one more time to each side. And then we'll just bring the legs back to neutral, back to center, and see if that changed anything in your hips. Okay, step the feet about hips width apart, and we're going to come into some spinal undulation. So I'd like you to place your hands on your belly, but in order for you to see the movement, I'm going to move this arm out to the side. Okay, so on your next exhale, push your feet into the floor, flatten the back against the ground, feel how the muscles under your fingers start to engage. And then on your next inhale, curl your tailbone into the floor, arch the waistband away from the floor, belly moves into your hand. Exhale, flatten the waistband towards the floor. Inhale, arch your waistband away from the floor. The hips stay on the ground the whole time. We're just taking the sacrum and nodding it across from the tailbone to the waistband. And if you can keep your head and neck as relaxed as possible, you'll get this little bonus movement at the neck. Let's do that one more time. All right, now we're going to go around the edges of the sacrum in a circle. So it's basically taking the last two exercises and combining it. So you're going to start by bringing your weight, shifting your weight over to your left hip, then to your tailbone. I'm going to move my hands out of the way. Then to your right hip, and then to your waistband. So left hip, tailbone, right hip, waistband. Left hip, tailbone, right hip, waistband. And keep moving around that way. At first it feels very clunky, but with enough practice it'll become smoother. And you'll notice that the feet really play an active role here. Just another reminder of how the legs and the feet are intricately tied to the health of the low back. Last one in this direction, and then we'll go the other direction. So weight on the right hip, then the tailbone, left hip, then the waistband. Right hip, tailbone, left hip, waistband. And continue to roll around the sacrum this way, nice and slow. Just feeling into any tender areas, being very gentle there. Last one. And then come to center and pause. Notice any sensation around the sacrum, around the back of the hips, in the belly. You might notice kind of a flush, a rush of blood, or even just a loosening feeling. That is a move that you can do on your back. You can do it seated in a chair. You can do it standing. It's very small and subtle, and if you do have low back pain, I highly recommend doing some form of this in any of those positions every day. All right, let's just go ahead and windshield wiper the knees from side to side. And then we're going to bring the legs back up to center and find our way into comfortable relaxation pose. So that might be just letting your knees fall in towards each other, feet wide apart, and arms down by your sides. Or, as I mentioned, you might come to your chair. I'm going to come to my sofa because it's the right height for my legs. And what you want to feel when you get that when you get your legs propped just right, so you want to feel a relaxation at the inner thighs, groins, and low back. It should feel like a really nice release. And it may take a few breaths. If you're somebody who chronically holds this area tight, then it may take more than a few breaths. So just pause here, breathing. Feeling the rise and fall at your belly. Hopefully feeling a settling across the back of your pelvis. Heaviness through the legs, arms, head, and torso. Let that breath be smooth, steady, whatever depth or pace is right for you. And take a moment to slowly bring your focus from wherever it traveled back into your body, back into the space. Gather your knees in towards your chest. Rock a little bit side to side. You can do this with knees bent or with legs straight, depending on what feels good to you today. And then when you're ready, just gently rock your way over to your side. And very slowly make your way up to a comfortable seat, whatever that looks like in your body today. So take a moment to feel. And then let's slowly bring the hands together right at the center of your chest. The slight bow to your head, giving thanks with honor and with respect.